Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back for another video. Welcome back for another line check. And today I'm sitting on the couch. I got Matthew Runaway with me. He's a country artist, and outside of that, I'm not going to say anything because you can tell us all about it. So thanks for taking the time, dude.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Hell yeah. So let's start with what you've currently got going on. So COVID hit, and now we're all kind of halted. That's basically the way the last couple interviews have gone here on the channel, is like just talking about the fact that, you know, usually I start with what are you up to? But right now everybody's up to the same thing. So now that you're not performing and touring and, you know, not getting to do studio time outside of remote stuff, what's going on?
Well, so with me, it was actually, I know like a lot of people, it's a terrible time, but for me, it was almost like a breath. I had started, you know, I was putting songs out to radio, and it's funny, they say you have forever to put the first one out, and then it's a rush. And that's what started happening. Everything started moving so fast, and there was so little time to get things done. So for me, when everything got paused, it gave me a massive amount of time to write music. And once I started building a catalog of doing that, I thought, I want to do more. I want to build my brand still. So then I started building YouTube, right? Kind of like what you're doing here. And it's been incredible just over the course of 2 months. The amount of following I've built on YouTube, and it's a different world. It's almost a whole other community that you just don't realize is there until you're doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, 2 months on YouTube and you're at 7,000 subs. That is not anything that you can look away from, for sure. I was, I mean, dude, I was like 6 years to get to 5K. So you're just flying, bro. Congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
So what kind of content for our audience? What kind of content are you featured over on the channel?
So I'm doing a whole bunch of things. The main thing right now is reaction videos. They're a lot of fun to do, and I'm doing everything. You can, you know, submit what you want me to react to. We've done country, we've done rap, we're doing rock, metalcore, emo, screamo, every single thing, you know. We're doing whatever you want to call it, we're doing it there. We're doing blogs on there, vlogging. Obviously my original music is there, just tons of content. I don't really want to limit it to one thing. Yeah. I'm just trying to find out what people are really excited about and want to see.
Yeah, it's always good in the early days too. Like a lot of the guys that I talk to that are looking for advice on YouTube, is one of the things that I tell them. And one of the things that we talked about was, try a bunch of forms of content, because you never know what's going to stick. So what so far has been really successful for you?
Obviously reaction videos. I never imagined they'd be as popular as they are.
Yeah.
But then it's crazy. Like they start blowing up, like 50,000 views in 2 days, and, you know, 100,000 views in not that, you know, a small amount of time. And like, I know those are numbers that you're seeing pretty consistently, but like considering the
newer channel.
Yeah. Considering the channel has 7,000 subscribers, or, you know, at the time, maybe even 4,000, to have a video go to 100,000, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that side of the world, that people are watching these things. And I see a massive kickback going to my original music. And that was the goal to start with, is just have more exposure for my original music. And I also have that clip at the start of every reaction video for my music, so people kind of hear it, and, you know, and if it sticks in their head, maybe they go check it out, you know. So if 100 of those 100,000 people go check out my music, it was worth it to me.
Yeah, 100%.
You know? So
for sure, dude. So how have your peers reacted to the idea of reactions on YouTube? I guess just in specifically coming from that sort of area of the industry, being country and like the Nashville scene. I know you do a lot of work down in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's been mixed, to be honest, you know. I've had people say it's a terrible idea, and that it's, you know, not really going to help me, and it's just a waste of time. And then obviously I have people say it's a great idea, and like I've gotten so much respect from some people. It's honestly, in the most raw form, the people that grind respect it. The people that are, you know, relying on the old ways and kind of just waiting around, those are the people that have maybe not liked the idea. And that might be something because they're nervous of what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reaction I've been getting with it. Obviously, like, there's nobody that's right in the middle, and I'm sure the people that are right in the middle just aren't saying anything. But like what I've experienced is like the negative and the really positive. I mean, like the most positive people are the ones that are mostly in my life, like you and, you know, my girlfriend and things like that. Those are obviously the most positive people.
Yeah, so when you say like scared of what's happening in the world, you mean like, I guess, the way tech is influencing the industry's growth, or what are you talking about there?
Yeah, a few different things. So like COVID, when are we going to play live again?
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Nobody knows when we're going to play live. There's been a date thrown around of fall 2021. So it's like, are artists just going to sit and wait? Like, if you're not playing, you're not making money. And I mean, it's not all about money, but you got to live.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're either going to have to go back and work your job or just sit. You know, so it's like got to figure something out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about being like a professional musician is like, it's in the definition. Like, in order to be a pro at this, it means that it's your daily. And if it's your daily, it means it's got to pay you like your day job would.
Yeah.
So if you're not making that money, like, what are you going to do? You know, it's tough. A lot of musicians are in a really tough position right now with not being able to play shows.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other big thing in country music is, how long is radio going to be around for? You know, because radio is a big moneymaker in the country music industry. And don't quote me on the stats, but I think it's something like 70% of people under the age of 30 don't even turn the radio on, don't listen to anything to do with it. So that's an interesting thing. So with us building a fan base in that generation, how long is that going to be sustainable for?
Yeah.
If people aren't listening to radio, they're not going to be able to afford it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And like, do you listen to the radio?
Every now and then. Since diving deeper into country music, I have, just because knowing my songs are out there now. But before, I wasn't listening to a lot of it. No, but that's the thing. Now I realize that it's an amazing thing, and I try and support it as much as I can. Satellite radio, things like that, and I can't say anything bad about them because those people have changed my life. So it's amazing, but there is that part that you have to think about what's next, and that's obviously where YouTube came along. You have everything on there. You have car YouTubers giving away cars every month and making millions of dollars, and people playing video games making millions of dollars, and it's just something you can't ignore anymore.
So what is next? I mean, I have the perspective from my sort of side of the industry, but my side of the industry is a lot smaller than country music. You know, country music is up there with pop, and just as far as like, you know, the amount of money it brings in and the popularity that those artists can reach is a lot higher than like what guys coming from my side of the scene really can aspire to in a lot of ways, just because there is a bit of a roof because of how coarse the music is, you know? So,
yeah.
So in your side of things, what is next? You know, what does that mean?
In what way do you mean that? Like, what's next for me or what's next for the industry?
For the industry, what do you think? Like, obviously it's just opinion and guessing, but like, what do you, if radio dies, you know, where are these artists going to go?
I think it is YouTube. I think it is, we were talking about this the other day, but Spotify is now launching a video streaming service. We're going to see companies getting exclusive rights to an artist.
Yeah.
So I can see it going there. And the other thing that people have to think about is, like everything, you think about people that always like, oh, I bought Apple stocks and I'm, you know, a millionaire now, or I bought these stocks and I'm a millionaire. But if you went and bought them now, you're not actually going to make that much money. So it's the same with these things, in my opinion. If you're not on them early, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to build a following or build a presence on that platform when 1 billion people have joined in the last 6 months, you know, like.
Yeah. So do you think that it will come, like, industry-wise, and I'm talking, like, just overall, do you think it'll come to the point where, like, a consumer is presented with the option of, like, well, if I pick Apple Music, almost like, you know how if you're looking at the streaming services, we got Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, there's the Apple stuff that I'm not sure about how big that is in comparison to the first two, but then obviously Disney Plus is a pretty big competitor in that space, in the video streaming side of entertainment. When you look at those, it's like you see a list of things that you can watch on each of them. Like HBO has Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And Netflix has like, the movies and the Netflix originals are doing. Like The Witcher, that's a big one for me, just being a fan of that. And then like over on Disney Plus, we have obviously the huge Disney catalog. Do you think that it will become like that? Like Spotify Music will have like Drake and Taylor Swift. I'm just throwing out different examples, but maybe 2 or 3 huge players on that platform, and then on Apple you have the other 2 or 3, and like it's like you have to pick between or get them all in order to be able to actually enjoy like all of what's relevant in top 40 today.
I think you nailed it, but there are a few other things that you have to think about too. It's the gatekeepers being the labels.
Yeah.
The second that happens, they lose a lot of power.
Yeah.
Because Spotify now gives Drake a contract for, I guess he is the most streamed artist in the world, I think. If not, he's up top 10.
He's number 1 on Spotify, but Joe Rogan going to Spotify just passed him. If we're talking music, he's number 1, but if we're talking just Spotify's content, Joe Rogan just passed him.
Okay, well let's just go with just music. So he's in, top 5, if not number 1. By him going to Spotify and now having that much pull there, and Spotify can be like, here's $300 million. We're going to, for an X amount of year contract, they now become a label. We're going to put you on every platform. We're going to put you on every playlist we have. We're going to push you. We're going to put ads. We're going to do everything. You're going to be the king of our video site. That's now more attractive to an artist than what a label really can do. Other than you're going to need to tour, you're going to need to do these things. But when you have the appeal that Drake or some of these big artists have, you're going to be able to book a tour. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like Drake puts a tour out across North America, it sells out. So do they really need the label anymore? It's an interesting world, an interesting time, because that's what labels don't want. They don't want to lose the fight to Spotify, because once that happens where they're buying all these exclusive rights to artists, I really think it's going to hurt. Like the industry is going to change drastically. Now you're going to see a lot more of like, that person was on Survivor and they have a following and they have hype and they're learning to sing, sign them.
Yeah.
Like
we're already starting to see that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the old school way of grinding it out and building a fan base. Like that's the one thing I always say to a lot of people too. They build all this hype around themselves and they play a show to 3 people. But if you can bring people out to a show, you can make money. That's at the end of the day. Do you actually have a following, or is it all fake?
Yeah.
And again, if it's an online following that makes money, that's something that to be said. But right now in the country industry, they still rely on like bringing people out. What's your presence on radio and how much money are you making from this stuff? And the labels are taking so much of that money. So it's going to be attractive for an artist to go to Spotify and sign a $400 million deal for 20 years. You know what I mean? Because they might have made $400 million with the label, but the label took 50, management took a certain percent. Everybody's got a hand in the pot. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. And it's also like the big thing, a big part of what the label used to do was, this is a substantial part, but obviously there's a lot more to what they provide an artist. But a big part of what they used to do was help the artist out with the recording costs, right? Especially if you're just starting to pop off, because back in the day, it was a whole other monster to get something recorded. And like the costs were insane compared to today. But now it's like maybe not in country, because there's still a lot more analog, but in the digital side of the industry, like obviously metal is very digital at this point, and then pop and EDM and the electronic stemmed songs, artists, like any of that you can do on a laptop with almost no equipment.
Look at some rap songs that are like the number 1 on the chart with like 500 million views on YouTube, and it was made in like an apartment bedroom.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of that music is just using samples too.
Yeah.
And they're just pulling it in and rapping over it and doing things like that, and it's blowing up. Like that's so popular right now.
Yeah, and that's what makes it even more of a dangerous time for labels, because if you can record a dope track in your bedroom, in your closet, like we used to do pre-pro in the closet, right? Like if you could do that, and you could just, anybody has with an internet connection can log on to DistroKid, and pay them whatever it is, like $20 for a year, and upload a bunch of songs to these platforms, including Spotify. Like, what are they there for at that point,
Yeah. And so speaking of studios, like I have stories about that where I have people talk to me like, oh, I recorded at Blackbird, and for the people who don't know, Blackbird is like the studio in Nashville, or one of them. Basically, for you to go in there and record a record, you're looking at probably $25,000 just for the room. That's not for an engineer to record you. That's not for a mixer. That's not for anything. That's just for the room.
Yeah.
And then you got to go in and actually run the studio. So you have to hire a guy to be the producer, the guy that runs the board, the live room, everything like that. So for an artist at my level, that is there isn't even a question. Like, that ain't happening.
Yep.
And for the bigger artists, I think you're starting to see more and more where they're actually not doing that anymore. Like, why would you go in and spend $100,000 to record in a beautiful studio like Blackbird and then have MIDI drums or like a clap track?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Where it's like, if you're going to have an all natural record, sure, then I fully get that. But if you half your instruments are fake, why are you paying $20,000 for a room? Because you're not captivating any of the sound from the room.
Yeah, there's no point to it.
Yeah, so it's like that big recording cost is not there anymore.
No, it's not. It's not. While we're on the subject of that, like, what do you prefer? Like, do you prefer a mix of analog and digital, or are you mostly just stick to that warm tone that that analog can obviously provide?
I'll tell you right now, like, every song that I have out is not pure analog at all.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think, I don't know how many artists can even say that now. Like, all my content is pure analog.
You gotta be pretty big.
Yeah, like it's so hard to. I try and get as much of a mix as I can
Between the two.
Yeah, so like I always have played drums and things like that, but sometimes the kick just doesn't have enough punch, and there's a kick laid on top, just to give it that. And like the snare is a big one, right? It's hard to get a great snare tone. Sometimes it's mixed. Overheads usually I think are like
easy.
Yeah, they're pretty easy, but yeah, as far as like the shells of the kit, they're usually layered.
Yeah.
It's just to get that. And I mean, like,
it up.
You're going into studio time again, like, geez, to get a kit to even sound half decent, you're looking at, like, in my opinion, 4 hours of setup. You set the kit up, move the mics, test it out. Okay, that didn't work. Move them a bit here, like, just to get it in the pocket.
Yeah, when I talk to people who don't understand, like, recording drums, or just, like, when I talk to just, like, music fans, and, like, the whole concept of me being a drummer comes up, and I get, like, questions from, like, hobbyists on like, how I do my videos or stuff like that. Like, when I describe to people what goes into recording a drum set for real, most people are so blown away. Like, there's, like, well, I mean, if you're not a musician and you're just a consumer of music, most of them don't really consider the fact that you have to mic each element separately.
Yeah.
That, like, a lot of people think you just put a mic above a kit and you're done. But, like, no, there's like 3 to 4 mics on the kick drum.
That's it. Just on the kick.
Yeah. There's 2 top and 1 bottom on the snare. That's 3 mics on the snare. You know what I mean? And, like, then you have to mic the room, both like mids and far, and then overheads, and then close mics on low volume cymbals, and then 1 to 2 mics on your toms, 1 mic on the toms, depending on the microphone. Depending on the microphone on the toms, and you're pretty much good. But yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot more than anybody would ever guess.
And then you get somebody that's never mixed something like that, because a producer or the engineer running the board, a lot of guys haven't got the experience of being in $100,000 studio and doing these kind of things, and instantly you realize, like, they don't know how to mix that, because they've never got to do it.
Really? Is that something you encounter a lot?
I haven't encountered it a lot because we're not running pure analog. But yeah, like, I mean, if we were running pure analog and we mixed them into the track, it wouldn't be great, because it's just so, like, unpopular now to do that. It's just it's so it's costly, right?
It's very costly.
You're in the studio setting up, doing all those things, running it in, miking it, editing it. That's like a day. Day one was drums for like a song.
Yeah.
And you've now paid for that day of studio time and for all those people running it just for drums.
Yeah.
Versus, the morning, you could in a morning probably do a 5-song EP with half samples. You know what I mean? Like samples in a mix where it's like the drums don't have to be perfect. Let's get it mic'd up, played, and done.
Yeah, like I get clients who hit me up for session work, and like when guys hit me up and they're like, "Hey, I just need you to write, MIDI's fine." I'm like, easy, Like I like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Send back, done. Like sure, no problem. But then when I get guys that like want me to, mic the kid up and track it for real, it's like there's like a little bit of a learning there, but then you have to write. I start by writing it out in MIDI, fleshing out the parts. Then I take it to the kit and just play through the parts roughly to see if like all of the MIDI makes sense, like if the sticking makes sense, because I don't want to be like, crossing over in weird places and stuff. And then after that, like I'll record everything after setting all the mics up and everything, and then I'll do a rough mix and send it out. So like my fees from samples to live drums are like, it's almost 4 times the cost just because I'm charging by the hour.
Yeah. And then like you mic it up and like you hear things that you just don't hear. Like, wow, that snare rattles really badly. Or, just things like that.
Yeah. And if you have like a guy who really knows what he's doing, you can, I think live off the floor, real natural drums, guitar, bass, everything is a million times better.
Agreed. Yeah.
But you have to you really have to have the facility for it. You have to have the guys on your team that know how to handle this and mix it and get it out to a final product and mix and master to a final product that can compete with the ease of digital, But in the end, I think it's a much, much better result. Even I'm trying more and more to take the processing out of my mix, like going into the covers that I have coming out soon and like some of the session work that I'm doing, like I'm trying to get rid of any blends, or I'm trying to get rid of, all the units that I'm using, right? Just to like keep it more natural, more warm, more real, right? Because in the end, it is better, but it's really hard to do it properly.
Yeah, and then even the time to edit that, a lot of people maybe that just don't know. I think they think it's like you stick a microphone in front of it and the sound you hear on a record is like what it just sounds like. It's like there's compression, there's reverb, there's so many things on a kit. Like it's never just like dry.
Oh yeah, never.
Yeah, it's never just dry.
No, you can't do that. No. All right, man. Well, I pretty much covered what's going on right now. Let's talk about you. Let's go back in time. So, where did you start? Let's talk about your hometown, Perth, Ontario.
Yeah,
I gave it away. Small town Perth. Let's talk about growing up there and like what got you into music and what got you into guitar, because I know you started with guitar. So let's talk about all that.
I grew up on a cattle and crops farm, and all my life I was working on that, and went through school. I wasn't playing really until high school. I never started. It was something I always liked. It was, growing up listening to country music. And it's funny, my relation with metal didn't start till later in my life, but I got really passionate about it too. And then, I started with guitar, and the story behind that is my mom was like, come to this Def Leppard concert with me. And I was like, I don't want to go tonight. She's like, no, just come. And so I did. I was like, oh, fine, I'll go. And we had fairly good seats. They weren't the greatest, but they were pretty good. And I'll just never forget it. Def Leppard started playing Pour Some Sugar on Me, and there's just like a light bulb in my head. It clicked. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, it's just, and it sounds so cliche, but that's sometimes how it happens. And I just remember leaving that. And like, before I even left the show, I was like, I want a guitar. Like, I need to get a guitar. And that was what I was attracted to right away.
Yeah.
And, I had to get a guitar. So, the first guitar that I got was a really crappy acoustic Yamaha guitar. And I was told that if you play on that for a year and you learn your first year on an acoustic guitar, it'll make you a better player.
Yep.
So don't get an electric. So I said, okay. So I did that for probably a year and a half. And then I got my first electric, saved up for it. And I got an Epiphone Les Paul Custom. And I pretty much played with that up until Shout for Serenity, which we'll get to, which was a band that we played in together.
Yeah.
So I think I played up until then with that. And so just the small town thing, it's funny. When you're growing up in it, you like it, but you hate it. And then as you get into high school and, you know, hormones are flowing, you get that anger, that like, that not entitlement. I don't know the proper word I'm looking for, but you want out.
Yeah.
You're like, you feel the weight of, if you're not out of here by 19 years old, you're here forever.
Yeah, for sure.
And I made it my mission that that's not what was going to happen to me. I was getting out. I was going to do anything that I could to get out. And I was also playing baseball pretty heavy at that time, you know, football, stuff like that. But baseball was what I was really good at. So I found my way out. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try and go to school then. I'm going to, you know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play baseball at school just to get out of here, and we'll figure it out. So I went to Kingston and I started school there. And within the first half a year, I was already like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we're out of Perth now. So we already did it.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, we already did it once. So
Yeah.
we can do it again. Where do we need to go now? And I started looking for bands to join, things like that. I was starting to get into a level that I could play. I had, when I was up there, I was playing in a band called Trouble in Denmark. It was like a metalcore band. Wasn't what I wanted to play. I was not into screaming at this time. I still hadn't found, you know, what I'd liked.
Yeah.
Because metal or metalcore is a genre to me that if you're not into it, you have to go into it gently, and then eventually you get into a lot more until it's like, I love it now. Like I love Architects, things like that are very heavy, but I wasn't at that time.
Yeah, it's like you need a gateway drug.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like everybody I know that gets into this genre because something much lighter but has influence from it introduces them.
And do you remember mine?
I want to say We Car, but
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
We Came as Romans.
I wasn't sure because like that's pretty heavy out the gate.
Yeah,
you know?
but like it was funny because the guy, one of the guys named Cameron in Trouble in Denmark, he was like, "You have to listen to this band. My band, we're going to open for them. We need a guitarist." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And so I listened to it and I was like, "Oh, this isn't. I don't know."
You listen to We Car?
Yeah,
You put that on.
and I didn't really like it. And then all of a sudden, I heard Kyle, the singer in that band, sing, and I was like,
R.I.P.
Yeah, I was like, mind blown. I'd never heard anybody singing at like that high as a male with that heavy guitar in behind it. And I think it was, I'm trying to think of the first song. I think it was Roads That Don't End or something like that. And I was hooked. I just would skip the screaming. I would listen to that over and over and over. And then after I'd listened to it over and over and over, I started being like, oh, I like that part of the screaming. I like that part of the screaming. Then it's like, then you find The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
And then you start, you know, that's a great guitar riff. And then eventually it just, you start like liking things that you probably wouldn't have at the start.
Yeah,
you know, like
for sure.
Parkway Drive, Architects, you know, you have to get, blast beats were a big one. It's hard to get into blast beats. And I think, Parkway was the band that kind of got me into that.
Yeah, they had some,
Yeah. And then after that, it was like, okay, well, there's some pretty cool bands in Toronto doing stuff that need guitarists.
Yeah.
So it was like, let's get to Toronto. And that's what I did. I got up here and started playing in a few bands. None of them were really the greatest. And then I got in a band called Shout for Serenity, which was with JD Meebor. I don't know how to say his last name. JD Meebor?
Yeah. I think
So he was on YTV The Next Star. And then, so we were working off of that. And then that's where I met you.
That's right.
We were pretty young at that point, young and fresh into the world.
I was like 16.
Yeah, we thought we were Motley Crue.
Oh, we did. Got us into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So that did its thing, and that got us into the music world. And
For real.
And it did. Like, it was crazy. Like, we bypassed so many things in that band because we practiced.
Yeah.
Almost every day.
7 days a week.
Yeah, for like 5 hours a day, if not more. Like, we were playing for 5 hours a day.
Yeah,
and then we'd be doing band meetings after that.
Yeah.
And hanging. So it was like a family. And then obviously that ended eventually. Just from, you know, the typical thing. A band just breaks up, you know?
Yeah.
And so then I kind of was looking for other things, and I found a band called Aspire. And it was in the very early stages, but there was something unique about it. So I was like, let's do this. And Aspire kind of started popping off and doing stuff locally. And then that's when the drummer, I guess, left, or I don't know what happened with it fully, but because I was still new to that band. And then I was like, okay, well, I got a guy.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even before that, like let's talk about like Brian Stars kind of helped you guys out a little bit.
Yeah, so
right?
we did the first video, We Stay Golden Forever,
Yeah.
or WSGF is what it's called.
Yeah.
And Brian Stars was posting about it, and we got a lot of alternative press.
He dropped it on his YouTube channel at the time, right?
Yeah, he dropped on his channel. SJC actually helped promote it. They were pushing it on their page and everything like that.
Oh,
so
okay.
it got a lot of hype really quick locally. So it's still not out there. And Pat Murphy came along and he did wonders for that band. He really changed everything about it and made it like a legit band that was ready to go.
Yeah.
And then that's like when you came along and I got, like I said, we got to try out Wyatt. Let's do that. You came in, killed it. Then we moved forward with you.
Yep.
And then we started doing the touring and everything like that. And that was crazy. Like that was just, it was so much fun. And boy, did we learn some lessons out there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I like at this point in my life too, I was like 19 and like I left school for Shout for Serenity.
Yeah, you did.
And like I was like, yeah, everything that I learned how to do, like coming up after that point was like I didn't learn taxes or I didn't learn like how to keep a job and I didn't learn like, what I mean, I didn't learn everything that I was learning. All my life lessons were like, how to survive on the road and like how to like set up a drum set properly so you can get it on stage and get it off stage and like how, sound works and how signal flow works and like everything that I eventually needed later on. But I skipped a bunch of stuff that I wish I had picked up just like growing up, like finishing high school and developing some real social skills would have been really good. Well, what are you going to do,
Yeah, exactly.
Drum sets a calling.
And at that time in the music industry, it was really cool to be not huge.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Like those kind of Warped Tour bands that were,
It's because the local scene was alive.
Yeah, that was it. Like it wasn't uncommon to play to 500 people in that scene.
Yeah.
It wasn't at all. And
No.
man, like I look back at it, what a time. Like it was so much fun. Where it's so much business. And I still love what I do. Don't get me wrong. I really do. But back then it was like, it was easier almost.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess you have a little less care in the world because you're so much younger.
Yeah.
But
no responsibilities too.
No.
Like now we both have like a lot that we have to make sure that gets paid for each month.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, being an adult and, trying to have your shit together best you can. You have to like, it's like bittersweet because the fun and the passion is still there for me, but at the same time, like there's a lot of like, I need time away from it. And like, I never used to feel like that. Like I could go and do whatever for as long as it had to be. And, like whatever we were doing, even like long music video shoots, like we get done like a 12-hour music video shoot. And like I'd be like, all right, well,
let's go practice.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or let's go jam, or let's go party, or whatever it is, right? And like now it's like when I get done filming for the channel, or at the end of the day, or I mean, imagine same thing with you when you get done writing. It's like, oh, work day's over. Now I can relax.
Yeah. And it's funny because I believe, and I mean, it's not the only road. This is just what I believe. I believe it's really important that you go through that.
Oh, yeah, for
I
sure.
think it's very important that in your head that you can struggle, that you can put the work in.
Yeah.
And just because you might not be grinding as hard as that now, you can.
Bro, I remember days in Shout for Serenity when I was 16, 17, where I watched you stay awake for 3 days straight.
Yeah.
I remember one day we were driving, like we had a 6-hour drive ahead of us, and you had been up for like 2 days, and you were like, guys, I know my body. Give me 20 minutes and I'll be able to do this. And you went and you passed out for 20 minutes. And I timed you to the T. I heard your alarm come off. You came out. You're like, all right, everybody in the van, let's go. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. I'm just in the back seat the whole time. Please don't crash. But now we did it. We got through. There's so many times like that where it was just like, we couldn't even remember how long it had been without sleep.
Exactly.
I remember doing music video shoots remember we did that one shoot down on Cherry Beach with
Crystalline.
Yeah. And like that started at like midnight or 1 a.m. or something. And like that was after we had practiced with Aspire earlier that day, and then I had worked an 8-hour before rushing into the city to practice with Aspire, and then after Aspire we all go to do the Crystalline shoot, and then we're up till like 4 a.m. Then I come back to your place and I grab all my gear, load in my car, drive home. I get home for like 6 a.m. I gotta work at 9. So I just stay up, set up my drum kit, and head back to work.
Yeah, and that video shoot was like guerrilla style too. So it was like no permits, no nothing.
No. That's why we were so late, because we were like, we just got to get it done before the cops show and get out.
Yeah. And it's like the one thing back then too, like when you're in that mentality, it was a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, $4,000 for, to get our link on this website. Yeah, we're going to get seen by the people. Now it's like, you'll think like $4,000 for that.
Yeah.
Is that worth it?
Yeah.
Could I use that money somewhere else?
Yeah. Now it's like, it's not as impulsive, and you have to approach things with like decisions that make sense for the future. And like, I don't know, both of us have a lot more like knowledge and like mistakes behind us. Like we have enough mistakes made that I feel like there's plenty more to come, I'm sure, but there's enough mistakes behind me at this point where I can I kind of save myself before I step into a pothole again.
Absolutely. And that was just it, like there's a lot of people out there asking for money that isn't going to do anything for your fan base.
Yeah.
And it's just like you have to watch out for that, where it's like just build your own fan base and only pay for something if it's going to help you. What's the point of paying for something if it's just so your name's on something? A lot of people just want to have that, like, I had this.
Yeah, that's true.
And they just pay for it.
Okay, so after Aspire, what'd you do? I mean, I know it, but you tell it.
So I, after Aspire, I knew that like I wanted to get into country music at that point. So that's what I really wanted to do.
How did you make that decision?
It was it was just, I had nothing going at that point. So it's like Aspire was done. We had dragged it out a little bit longer, you know what I mean? Even like after you had left, we dragged it out a little bit longer, but then it just, it was like, whatever. It's done.
There was what, like after I left and Matt took off for Vancouver, it was the other Matt. There was you and Jordan left, and was Eli still with you?
No.
No, so it was just basically you two, and you guys got like one more show in, and before it was pretty much call it quits.
I think we did like 5 more.
Oh,
or so, yeah.
Okay.
But like, yeah, it was like the 5 shows we did have 2 different drummers.
Oh.
And we had to load the track up because it was just me and Jordan as a three-piece basically. And that band cannot be a 3-piece.
No.
It's so much electronic and like layers of guitar. It just wasn't working. So yeah, it kind of fell apart. And then country music is a genre that allows you, if you have a voice you have a story to tell, it rewards you for it. And that's the one thing I've always loved about it is I can just sit there with a guitar and write my story, where metalcore, you can tell a story, but metalcore is more of a message genre to me. It's more about like, you don't have to listen to these people. You can be anything you want. It's always a positive message, I find. But to me, metalcore always was a message genre where it gave you an overall feel. And country is, to me, a bit more of blue collar, day to day, more relatable for people that, are normal.
Yeah, 100%. I think a big part of that is probably the demographics, the age. The age is a big part of that, I think. That's
what led me into wanting to do that with writing, but I knew I had no experience in that industry. And I really didn't know what to do at that point, so the only thing I'd ever known how to do is play in a band, because that's all I've ever done.
Yeah.
And so I started playing for a country artist in Kitchener-Waterloo area, and he had some things going for him and stuff like that, so I started playing guitar for him, and I tagged along to go down to Nashville and write down there and meet people and do things like that. And then after a bit of time, I just started thinking in my head, like, I can do this. Like, I think I can do this. Like, I was not singing at all at that point. I had never sang, really, other than, like a hey or an oh and like Shit for Serenity.
Yeah.
And I just kind of decided, like, I think I can do this. But then I started working with a publishing company that it's interesting because I got a bit distracted and was like, oh, I can just write songs and get them cut with artists. make some money doing that. Sure, I'll jump on that. And then a little bit of time passed. And so I'm like kind of down in Nashville a lot at this point. And they were like, hey, have you ever thought about being a singer? And I said, not really. I'm like, I can't sing. And they're like, nobody can sing. You got to get training.
Yeah.
They're like, it's some people have a God gift that's just given to them and they can do it. But
that's rare.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to work to get it. So they actually helped me with vocal lessons, getting me in with a phenomenal teacher who had worked with The Weeknd, massive artists. And I couldn't really afford to pay for that on my own because it was insane. Like it was a lot of money. So they were helping me with that. And it changed it. It was a game changer for me. Sometimes people can't see progress with themselves. Like say, if you're losing weight or you're bodybuilding, you don't see it because you're with yourself every day. But with vocals, if you practice, it's crazy. Like you will do things almost every day that you get better and better and better at it. So that's what happened with that. And then obviously because I was going out on my own, I couldn't really do anything with the publishing company anymore. So now I had to take the risk of, okay, you're going to go out and do this on your own now. And that's what I did. And I slowly started trying to get the right songs for me. And I got a bit rushed and I went and recorded 3 songs with Max Gabriel in Nashville. And he's worked with, a lot of, mid-sized artists. And I think he's got a few artists now that have a number 1 that he's worked with. And I wasn't ready. I went in there and it was my first time recording lead vocals in a studio. And it's different. Anybody who's a vocalist or has done that, they'll realize pretty quick, like, wow, I'm not ready for this. And so I went in there, cut it. It turned out okay. But me being me and you know who I am, I was like, that's not going out.
Oh, okay.
Unless I can put it out at the best quality I think I can do, it's not going out. And it was probably, in my opinion, 60% of what I felt I could be. So I ate the cost of doing that and just kept them in the back pocket and still have them, never been released. And then, I just kept developing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put another solid 8 months of work in to my voice, and then I'm going to try and record again. So then I recorded my first single, Small Town Pride, which, I wrote about Perth, and I'd lost all that bitterness. It's funny, as you get older and been in the city and things like that, you really learn to crave quiet.
Yeah.
So I looking back at it, I love the life of living in a small town. I love how I grew up on a farm and everything like that. So that song basically speaks to that and the pride of doing that, Small Town Pride. The recording process behind that, again, was tricky because I was still new to it. I recorded it, wasn't good enough. I re-recorded vocals. It was better. Then it just didn't sit right because it wasn't recorded at the same time, and it was weird. So then we re-recorded the vocals again and then got it mixed by a different person, by Scotty Chops, out in Vancouver, and he's worked with massive people. Like he's worked on Florida Georgia Line stuff. He's worked on everybody. And so we're like, okay, it's close enough. Like it's not perfect, but I started to think like if I'm waiting for me to feel it's perfect, it's not ever going to go out.
Yeah.
So it was like, let's start. So we put it out, did the release, did fairly well. You actually drummed in that music video.
Yep.
And that was the start of country music for me. And I was down in Nashville at that point pretty much full time and was living down there. I knew I wasn't going to put that song to radio because it was kind of my starter, but I got a good response from it and things went well. So start on the next, you know what I mean? One goes out, next goes, start for the next. And my plan was single by single by single by single because it just seems like that's what labels were doing a lot. And one thing about me is I try and study things a lot in the music industry. I'll link it into releases and who the press companies were for that release and the analytics behind like how they did this or this or this. So I try and replicate that, right? I just can't do it on a label level. And so I had come up with the plan that we're going to go single by single. And so we recorded that and it came out really well. Like I was actually really happy with this one. It was called Getting Over You. So we released it to radio and it did great in Canada. I had charted for the first time in Canada, and in America, it didn't chart near as high because it's just the competition down there is insane. it's just crazy, the talent down there. But so it charted in Canada, and I came back up here to work the single a bit and push it. And so I was then just going back and forth to Nashville. And yeah, that was kind of where it all started pushing and taking off. So I got a charting single in Canada with that, and we then released the next one. And I think now we're on the 4th single, which went out to radio again. So they have 2 charting singles in Canada, and yeah, that's kind of it.
When you decide you're done with Aspire, and you want to do this country thing, and you go and work with the artists that you had gotten involved with, and then you decide to do it on your own. When you took on like the prospect of becoming a vocalist and frontman of a band and doing like your own brand, what was the like practice schedule like? What were the things that you were doing to like develop your voice? Because you develop your voice in like an insanely fast amount of time. Mm-hmm. So what like, and a lot of people too, you said it earlier, a lot of people too, if they're not in the industry and they don't understand, a voice in a lot of ways is just like learning a guitar or drums. Yeah. You just have to, pay attention to the technique, practice every day, and get better at it and continue to progress. So what were you doing to do that?
So yeah, at the start, it was majority of just scales and exercises, and you can just, go online and look up scales and exercises for vocals. And that's what I was doing. There's like lip trills and buzzing and all that kind of stuff that you just do. And the reason scales is so important, and a lot of people are like, oh, because like a lot of people even on guitar, they're like, no, scales is useless. But where it's really good for vocal is it allows you to develop pitch. So when you are singing on that scale and you've done it 1,000 or 1,000,000 times, your brain just knows where to go. Yeah. If you know what I mean. Like you'll hear the first note and then you'll know where to go. So then you actually have skip scales, which will play like the first note of it, and it'll skip the second and the third, and it'll play the 4th or the 5th. Huh. So where it'll go 1, 5, 8, and you sing in between. So if you were off, you would be off on the 5th. Right. Yeah. And you would figure out that you were off. Eventually you just nail it. You're going all the way through it. So that way you develop good pitch. And I believe that is what sets a really great vocalist apart, that has that, not perfect pitch. That's people that have perfect pitch are insane, but that develop it close enough that it's next level. Yeah. Where a lot of the times people don't have great pitch, and with production now it can be fixed. Oh yeah. So that's one thing that I didn't want to be. I didn't want to have that crutch. So I practiced my scales for an hour a day, and then I would sing and learn songs and put it into practice, right? One thing with the voice that does suck though is it's not like a drum kit or a guitar or things like that. Your voice gets tired. And it just doesn't stop working, but you'll know. If you've ever done it, you'll know. You'll get raspy. You have to push harder to get sound to come out. And obviously that's the point where you don't want to be doing that. You have to push your voice a little for sure, but you don't want to strain it, because once you strain it, you're out for the next day or two if it's, hurt enough. And I mean, if you learn bad technique, Danny Warschnop is a great example of this. You can get surgery for actually not singing properly. And it's not that Danny's a bad singer. It's just that he wasn't singing properly, and he was doing it on the level of what Ask Alexander was touring. He destroyed his voice. If you listen to A Prophecy and then Moving On, which is post-surgery, people wouldn't even know that's the same human. Yeah. And it's, that's a combination of his surgery, having to adjust, because you're not going to sing in that key anymore because it's destroying you. And so you have to be very careful of that. But that was kind of how I was developing my voice. And then just researching, singers, every kind of technique, what there is out there. Because there's many different kinds of singer. There's airy singers, there's throaty singers, there's operatic singers. You have to kind of find yourself. And I'll say this now, like I would release 3 songs, and one of them was literally charting on radio, and I still hadn't found my voice. Yeah. I still haven't found it fully. I learn every day what it is more and more and more. So it takes time, and you will think you're there. You'll think, no, I found it. Like I have this, and I'm there, but you aren't, and you'll get it. It'll just click. That was kind of the thing for me. It was like I went from being not that great. And then it clicked, and I went from being not that great to average, and then from average to being a bit above average to getting into the level where I could compete with people now.
Gotcha.
So it's one of those things where you just have to, it's like every instrument, right? You just have to trust what you're feeling.
Yeah. So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the most important thing here is just the consistency, because if you're playing guitar or drums, you can have days where like I haven't practiced for 2 days. I'm going to burn myself out today. Like I do that sometimes where like I'm cramming for a cover, you know, and I've had a heavy upload schedule and I want to get this video up by a certain day, but I haven't been able to practice it enough. And then I just pick a day and go like 6 hours straight, you know, pounding energy drinks, do whatever it takes, get it learned. And, you know, next day practice once more, and then the day after film. You can't do that with vocals. So no. If you miss one day, you're really a full day behind in your own progression.
Yep, exactly. And then the other thing that people never think about is when you're learning a song, so if you struggle with memorizing or if you have that kind of thing, I've always learned, because from the guitar technique is like, you know, you play the riff over and over and over and over. So for me, I took the technique of, okay, well, you just sing it over and over and over and that'll help you memorize it, but you can't do that. So I had to start learning different techniques where I'm like, you know, learning 30 songs or something like that. I had to, for the first time, was writing songs out, like making myself write them out just so I would try and remember them. And, obviously that's under a time crunch. Like if you have all the time in the world, you don't have to do that. But if it's like, okay, next week I need to know 15 new songs, that's like to remember the lyrics, learn the chords. That's a stretch. So you can't just sing all the time because you'll burn your voice out. You'll be too tired. Yeah. So you have to learn how to do that, or like, you know, almost talk to yourself in your head a little more, as crazy as that sounds.
So you were also at the time, I remember that you were playing like almost weekly on acoustic sets.
Yeah.
When you were building. So what did that help? Like, did that help you with it? Did you notice a difference there?
Absolutely. So we all know this. If you're a musician, you can sit in a practice room for 1,000 hours and walk up on stage and it's different. It just is. So I did every single thing I could do to develop. I would play in front of, you know, a campfire. I would play at open mics. I would play anywhere. I was playing 4 days a week because I just wanted to get the experience to practice, you know, like I wanted to be able to, and finding the richness of your voice in a microphone is a bit different. So it's like you can use the microphone, and when you first start, you don't understand that, but you can really work your microphone. You can use it to do things. If you're playing a really low song, you can scoop your voice with the microphone more than you can naturally.
What do you mean there specifically?
So like you can use more diaphragm to hit that low note, and it's going to sound lower on the microphone just because it's a microphone. It's projecting the voice out. I don't have to sing as hard anymore.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have to belt it out, where if I'm just sitting here in front of a campfire, I might be belting songs out. The one thing that I had learned when I first started singing was when I went up there, I was louder than pretty much everybody that went up there to sing. And a lot of professionals are very loud, like they're loud singers because they learn to sing from the diaphragm and project. But that was the big thing. I was like, okay, there's something wrong with me. Like, why am I going up there and just blowing the mic out when all these other people aren't?
Yeah.
And it was just a difference in style, I guess, and learning how to use your mic properly. Because that's a big thing. Same as like when you're in big projectional notes, you have to back off the mic. So like mic technique is a whole thing in itself.
Does when you're in the studio, I would imagine studio to stage would be different with this next question, but I guess you can answer for both sides of things. How important is mic choice?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you a few different stories with that. So like going back to Blackbird, and I've never done this, but this does happen. So when, say, a big artist went in there, Luke Bryan, and paid like $100,000, he might actually request access to their mic collection, which they have all of these mics. And someone might come in when Luke Bryan records with, say, this Neumann $100,000 microphone. Nobody else can record with that microphone for the next 15 years or 5 years or whatever the stipulation is, because that could be the Luke Bryan tone. Now, not everybody does that. That doesn't happen a lot anymore, but it does happen. So some singers are very, very particular about what microphone they're singing in and are cautious of it. I'm a mixture of that. Like, if I walked into a studio and we're recording with like a 58, I'd be like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? But in general, I will start singing, and if I think there's something that I don't like about it, I'll just say it, you know? And that's one thing, just learning to be straight up with people and being like, I don't like the tone of my voice here. I would like to get much more richness in it. I would like more low end. I would like more top end, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And if they'll either make the adjustment on the computer to that, because I want to hear it then. I don't want to edit it after. I want to hear it then. Like, I mean, unless the producer is world renowned and he knows what he's doing, you kind of have to take control of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I've had mics switched out and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm used to dealing with female vocalists a lot more. Sorry about that. And they switch out a mic with a lot more low end and you can hear it instantly. So
what's your like go-to mic in the studio these days?
I don't really have one, to be honest. Like the one I use is an Apex, but I that has never seen one of my actual recordings.
Oh, okay.
I've recorded with a Neumann before. I think it was like a $25,000 Neumann. And it sounded great. Obviously, you're never going to go out and buy that. You know, if it's there, cool, let's use it. But yeah, that's probably my favorite so far. But I mean, if you go and listen to all three of my songs that were recorded with, you know, great microphones, I don't think you're going to be able to tell. Like, unless you're some guru with sound, I don't think you'd be able to tell what's recorded with a $20,000 one and what's recorded with a $2,000 one.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, man. So going forward, like, what are you working towards right now? I mean, obviously, like, you're probably in a lot of ways on hold, and we already covered at the beginning that you're really grinding YouTube content to sort of start developing a platform there. But as far as the music side of things goes, what do you have planned for when everything starts to open back up?
Yeah, so right now in my mindset, I'm not even worrying about shows. I'm not practicing for that. Like the guys I have, we're pretty tight, and you know, a couple practices and we'll be back to being right in the pocket. So for me, it's forming an online community, and that's, you know, I've been pushing YouTube really hard, uploading content almost every day now. Obviously for my music, I'm recording stuff. I'm probably going to be going to the studio again in about a month, I would say, you know, just getting everything packaged up with work tapes. And a work tape is just a rough sample of the song. So I like to have kind of a production of it on myself and then a work tape. I give the producer the work tape first because I want their ideas, and then I'll show them my ideas. Okay. So that's what I like doing. Shooting. We're going to be shooting a lot of videos this summer because I have some songs for next year already that I have to shoot the videos in the summertime so that they go out in the spring and have the summer, right?
Yeah.
So that's things that you start thinking about where it's like, okay, well, you can't just shoot that in the spring because say a drive-in's not open or a beach or something like that. Like, those things aren't going to look that great in November or February. Yeah. You know, so we're preparing for next year already. We have some stuff coming out at the end of summer again. And that's kind of the process that I'm doing right now. It's always preparing for the next single.
So you are, of all the people that are in, I guess, like my sphere, that are inside of like my network, you are one of the probably the best at networking itself, like establishing a network around you. And because you have a pretty extensive team. You've got producers on your team, you've got investors, you've got management, you've got obviously like the band situation inside of a country setup is definitely different than other genres. I mean, it's similar to other genres, but from the punk rock metal side of things, it's definitely different. So you have all these musicians that you have to take care of and pay and work with and rehearse with, and you had to bring all these people together at some point. And when I think about you and networking, I always think back to one of the times we were in the bus and we were driving, I don't remember what city we were in. We were in a city, and we pulled up to a red light, and you took one of our handout cards and you reached out the window like halfway out, and you were screaming at that girl on the sidewalk. You're like, "Here, check us out, we're playing tonight." And you passed that shit out. You do that all the time. And when, I mean, you met Lindsay before I met Lindsay.
Yeah.
And when I met Lindsay, one of the things we were talking about you at one point, and one of the things she brought up, she's like, yeah, first time I've ever met someone, and within 10 minutes, he had handed me a card.
Yeah.
So take me through. I mean, obviously it's important, but take us through the importance of networking and how you've developed this ability to bring people in, and why it's important to you, and what ways it's sort of pushed your career forward.
Okay, so funny story about it. When I started probably high school, or maybe around grade 8, I actually wasn't that good at talking at all. And it frustrated me one time. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember being really frustrated that I couldn't sell myself, or I couldn't get my point across. And ever since then, it was like, I would literally just be like, I'm going to go talk to that person. They would be completely random back when you could talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, now it's illegal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would literally just go up to random people and start conversations and just learn how to talk. And that's a skill in this day and age that can take you a long way now alone, because nobody knows how to anymore.
No.
And
we all know how to IM or fucking email or something, but like to actually learn how to like talk to someone, converse face to face, it's like rare now.
Yeah, and the theory I came up with was, and I'll just come up with an example. If I'm going to ask you for $1,000, it's a lot harder for you to say no to my face than it is over a text message.
Yeah.
Over a text message, you don't feel as guilty, you don't feel as bad. And doing these things where it's so, if you're trying to get a producer to work with you, I always would like to meet in person, and I would like to talk to them and pitch myself and tell them what my plans are, what my future is, and what I want to do and why I want them to be a part of it, and let them read the emotion in my face and my body language and how I'm an enthusiastic person, and I'm going to work hard to push myself, that they're not going to have to do anything. I'm going to take care of it. Where over a text message, it's easy for them to go, hey, sorry, I don't have time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if I make them come and see my emotion and see how ready I am to work, it's a lot harder for them to say no. So that was one thing I always really believed in, face to face. So, and then it just came along with the band. It was like, wow, what a perfect opportunity to just talk to people. Here's a product and I got to give it to them.
Yeah.
And I don't have to sell them anything. I'm not selling anything at that point. Like back in Show for Serenity and stuff, we weren't selling the music really. We were just trying to get out there.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was.
I mean, we were selling a performance, but not like physical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was so easy for me to go up to any random person and be like, here, take this and check it out. And yeah, that's just how it formulated, and how I got so good at talking was just doing that itself.
Just doing it.
Yeah, that was literally it, just doing it. And I like meeting people, I like hearing people's stories. I love that. I love hearing someone's story, and I love underdogs. I mean, because that's all we've ever been our whole life. Yeah. It's like, you can't do this. Okay, we'll see. Yeah, that's literally it. Nobody, and like, I mean, this is for anybody that is doubted or thinks they can't do it. It's like, whether you believe you can do it or not,
you're right.
You're usually right.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. So that's my message to anybody that thinks that. And that's how I got, able to sell myself and push. And I love it. I love being the underdog. And I still, to this day, even though I'm doing it now and like I'm not where I want to be, I'm not even close, I have that chip on my shoulder, like I still have that, like, we'll see in the end. Yeah. Yeah. And that's basically the synopsis of that story is just do it. Get good at promoting yourself. If you believe in what you're doing, it gets easier. If you're fake, if you're like, a car salesman that knows nothing about cars and you're selling cars, like people could see through that. You know what I mean? Yeah. If you love what you do, it's easy to sell it.
All right, so let's talk about your team. So I have a team around me. I've got agents. I've got a manager. I've got, Lindsay and we split everything I do and everything we do for the channel like 50-50. And you have that same sort of situation. You've got management, you've got, all those things. You've got the band, you've got your girlfriend involved in your career and helping you with the YouTube game now and supporting you and all the stuff that everybody is there doing for you. How important is that? How underlooked is that? And like, how did you cultivate that atmosphere, I guess, that support group.
So yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely one of the most, especially the really close ones with you. That is so important to me. And we learned that, where we learned that, I think, really quickly was when you're on the road with people, you have to like who you're with. If you do not like the people you're with, like, say you are straight edge and don't drink and don't do drugs and don't do that.
Like you used to be.
Yeah. And you're on tour with someone who does heroin every day, that's going to upset you. You know what I mean? Like that's going to, or, you know, if you hate drinking and driving and you have a band full of guys that drink and drive, or like, I'm like, these are extreme examples, but I'm just using them to get the point across.
Yeah.
You have to find people that believe in you and you like, that you're friends, right? So that's what I did. I took the slow road. I found an investor first, obviously, because it was hard to build a package that I wanted to build right out of the gate. And so, yeah, that's what I found first, and became very good friends with him. And now, like, it's one of those relationships where I feel safe with it. He's not the kind of guy that's going to years later be like, hey, you owe me 20% of this. You know, it's all very clean, and we talk about it. We make the decisions together, because obviously if you have an investor, you have to make them feel comfortable with what you're doing with their money. You can't just be like, yep, we're going to buy a house because it's good for the music. Yeah. So you obviously you have to, you know, tell them.
Shady bitch.
Yeah. It's like you bought a house. But so yeah, you have to be like, okay, well, here's what we need $10,000 for. And here's how I'm going to pay you back, or here's how it's going to happen. So we need this for the recording, the music video, a couple thousand for promotion here. And that covers that. Here's how we're going to make the money back. Radio, this, that, whatever your plan is. So you have to have a plan. That's where your business sense has to come in. And I remember you actually showing me a business plan way back in the day. And I used that at the start to start formulating those. Because if you're once you start dealing with money, it doesn't matter. People want to see that you're not going to do stupid things. Yeah. And you have to show them on paper how you're going to do it.
Especially when you're dealing with other people's money.
Yeah. So that's what I do every time is I write out my plan on paper. I give examples of it, and I present it to them. And, you know, at this point now, my judgment is trusted.
Why on paper? Why is that so important? Because I agree. I do the same, but I want to hear your opinion.
Maybe for some people it's not as important, but to me, it's something that they can see. It's something they can physically touch and look at. And if, you know, they're a hands-on learner rather than, you know, somebody who's not, they have something that they can look at and understand what I'm doing. Yeah. Rather than saying, you know, just saying it. Obviously, you know, if you look at most presentations, there's a slideshow in behind and they're talking about it. Or when Elon Musk released a Cybertruck, the truck is there and he's talking about it and he's using the truck and he's making it a prop and an example of it, even though the window did break.
I was about to say that.
But yeah, so that's why I feel it's important. It's just another tool to be hands-on with. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the first part where you said like it's physical, that's a big part of it for me, because like, yeah, I got ideas, man. Everybody's got tons and tons of ideas, but the first step to taking your ideas and creating something is writing it down. Yeah. Because the moment you write it down, it is no longer a thought. It is now a physical object. Even though it's a piece of paper with ink on it, that's a physical object you can hold, and that's the first step, you know? And it also helps, like, it helps get your thoughts out. Like, if your thoughts are, you know, like, I think a lot of people, I even have this with some of the guys that I sort of teach in content creation and working inside of social media. A lot of these guys coming up, they have so many ideas. It's like everything's an idea. They have so much. It's just like, it's unbelievable, you know? Yeah. It's exciting, you know? You're filled with all this energy, especially in the early days. It's just you and everything that you can do. And if you have the time and you're going for it, like, that's really exciting. And the ideas just are flying, right? But, you know, if you don't start writing those down and start eliminating the ones that don't work, trying them and eliminating the ones that don't work and keeping the ones that do work and remodeling it and reframing it every step of the way, and, you know, taking things off and restructuring how you're going to do something because you learned a lesson. And if you're not doing all of that, then, like, you don't have anything physical to sort of like account for, you know?
You might never even start.
That's the big thing, right? You might not even start because there's just so much, it's overwhelming you, you know? So yeah, I think writing things down is like, it's creating the thing. Even if it's you want to do something, just write down that you want to do it, and then write down ideas around it. Like anything that comes to your head, write in the center of the paper what you want to do, put a little circle around it, and then write blurbs all around that. Like it doesn't even have to make sense.
No.
But it'll structure your thoughts, and it's so important.
Well, there's so many stories of that. Like that's the story of most successful people. Like Jim Carrey, you know, wrote himself for $1 million check.
10 million.
No, was it 10 million? Post date it for 5 years, and he was living in his car, and he's like, I'm going to cash this check, and I think he said like it was just under 5 years, and he cashed a check for a little
The Mask.
Yeah, it was like a little under 10 million. It was like 9.8 million or something like that, and he's like, that's just it.
Yeah.
If you believe in it. And then I've heard stories, I can't remember if it was Tony Robbins or maybe it was him just telling the story of a guy that was like, he wanted a Ferrari. That was what he wanted. He really wanted to get a Ferrari, and that was his dream car. So he would go to a dealership and ask if he could just sit in the car just for a second, and he would just feel it, and he would just feel to imagine it into his life, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the next thing you know, that guy's got a Ferrari.
Yep.
It's not like you can be like, I'm going to imagine myself getting $10 million and sit on the couch. Like there's work involved with it, but you have to have something that you're striving for, whatever the goal is.
Yeah, and putting things in front of you too keep you from. It keeps you putting things in front of you, and regularly reminding yourself of those things keep you from looking around and looking back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get stuck in looking around and looking back. And the moment you start focusing on what's around you right now, and you start focusing on what's behind you, you start to get trapped in those things, and they start to repeat themselves.
Absolutely.
You know, like if you're not looking forward, you will never be able to shed your mistakes and learn from them.
Yep.
You know, and you'll never be able to see the relevance in your mistakes and your struggles, what you came from, and all the bullshit around you, and how to get out of it.
Yeah, and we all, and like as perfect as somebody might think they are, we all get caught up in it.
Oh yeah.
I remember looking at other country artists and being like, you know, like their voice is this or they're doing this, and why I'm not doing that. And to be honest now, like every now and then it still happens. Like I'll be looking and be like, what? But like, I don't care what you're doing anymore. I really don't. I like figure out how to make myself better, because by this person getting on something, it's not gonna, like I'm still not. So I either, I either can sit there and be upset about that and wonder why I'm not, or I can just keep building what I'm building.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mean being so ignorant that if you have something that's crap, that you're ignoring that it's crap.
Yeah.
You have to know what you have and believe in it. And that's the difference with that.
Yeah, and be willing to build on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to the team thing, we got off on their motivational speeches.
Yeah.
But so then after I had got an investor on board, then the next thing I had to do was find a producer and find the right guy for the starting out phase, because a big guy isn't going to work with you right away. You know what I mean? You're just not going to get on them. And I mean, I'm still not working with guys that are, you know, massive. You know, I'm working with very reputable people now, but nobody that has, you know, all, you know, 5 of Florida Georgia Lions records, you know, in their studio.
Yeah, yeah.
But I found Max Gabriel. And then, like I said before, I recorded 3 songs, didn't turn out. Nothing to do with his fault, just wasn't developed. The instrumentation was great. We did a good job on that. And then, so worked with him. I've worked with a few producers. Mark Schworer. I'm probably butchering that name. Mark, you're watching, I'm sorry. I've worked a bit with him. Phenomenal producer. Mark was great for just giving advice and just helping me improve. One thing I always do in the studio is, like, I'm always wanting to improve. I'm never afraid of somebody telling me constructive criticism. If you can tell me something to improve myself, I want to hear it. Like, if you're like, this is crap, and that's your comment, I'm not listening to that. I think I don't care what you think. But if you're like, this isn't good because your low end is screechy or your high end is pitchy, that's constructive criticism. I will listen to that and I will look into that. You know, so that's one thing that I always want to do. The next producer I worked with, another name, Gabriel Galucci, I think is his last name, and been doing phenomenal work with him. Great guy, very enthusiastic, very entrepreneurial, kind of like how I am. So he's out there grinding, working. He's even doing stuff with YouTube for his studio, and He's a big golfer, so he's grinding. I love that. I'm very attracted to somebody that's grinding. And so I kind of work with all those guys a little bit still, and always looking, for new things, new directions. So that's as far as the producers. Songwriters, there's so many to talk about. So I'll just, the guys I love writing with. Daryl Scott's one of my big writers I always write with. TJ Simpson is another amazing writer that I love writing with. Some guys down in Nashville. You kind of start formulating your circle, and you learn how to work with these guys, and I write with them a lot, and then we add thirds in. So we'll bring people that we don't know into our circles to write, because we know we have connection and we have energy together. Yeah. And then we'll bring the other people in. If it's a connection, then we'll move on and we'll keep going and so on, and it gets bigger, right?
Yeah.
Then we were at the point, okay, now I got to get a band. And that is hard, because you're a solo artist. It's not, their band. It's your band. So now the scheduling's on you. Mm-hmm. Paying for the rooms is on you.
Yep.
Everything is on you.
Paying the musicians themselves.
Yeah. So everything is on you, and you have to coordinate that. And you have to coordinate it in not being a dick. So it's like when you're getting into a room, say like a rehearsal room to go out on tour, that's costing you $100 an hour, not knowing your parts isn't acceptable to me. That's not something that should be happening. If you're, let me know before so we can change things. And I'm very I'm good with that. But yeah, you have to learn how to be not a boss, but you have to be a leader. If you're going to be a solo artist, you have to be a leader, or have management that's going to be your leader, and you're going to be paying them a lot of money. So in this day and age, you got to be able to do that. So yeah, I went out searching for people. First piece I found was my guitarist, Chris. And he's been like my right-hand man. He's like, he even works with the project for it. I'll be like, hey, can you do this? And I'll send it to him, and he'll just, he'll do the work for it. He loves music and just wants to be in it, and great guy. One of my great friends. So yeah, the next part I brought in was my banjo player, or utility player. He plays guitar on the songs that don't have banjo, and he plays banjo on obviously the parts that have banjo. Yeah. So, and then we kind of rolled with that for a little while. Didn't bring any drummers in or bass players. We just kind of did acoustic shows with that. And then I kept playing on my own, doing those kind of shows. Songwriting rounds. Songwriting rounds are something interesting. They're not in metal. So basically what a songwriting round is in Nashville, they have the Listening Room or the Bluebird, or all over. They have 3 or to 4 people sitting up on stage, and you all take turns. So I'll play a song, the person beside you will play a song, and you tell the story about why you wrote the song, what it's written about, what you were thinking about in the state. So you just tell the story, then you play the song. So that's a very different way of doing a show.
So what are you looking to get out of that? How does that work?
So obviously in Nashville, you get the admission. Obviously, you're not going to sell merch at that show unless it's a pretty big show, but it's more just to showcase your songwriting in Nashville, because publishing companies.
Oh, so that okay? Yeah. All right, got you.
So yeah, you have publishing companies that will pick you up, and labels, things like that. There are a lot of artists that people have no idea what they've written. There is a writer in Nashville called Hardy who now has a solo career, and he's doing crazy things. That guy had written 5, 6 number ones before he had released a single.
Wow.
And it's crazy. They were just making a massive living writing, and then they blew up doing that. And they're like, okay, well, now I'm going to be a singer. Or a label literally signed them because they were writing for them, and they're like, okay, well, we know you're try, test it, and true. Now we'll work on you. It's almost like paying your dues down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the big thing with songwriting rounds down there. They're not very popular up in Canada. There are a few places that do it, and some fans do really enjoy that. I find the older fans really enjoy sitting down and hearing how you wrote, and a lot of them tend to be musicians. Maybe the musicians that didn't get onto a huge level, that just want to hear your story, and they seem to love that kind of thing. And I don't mind doing those. I like sharing that, because that's why I got in the genre.
Yep.
And so then we added, I went through numerous drummers. to now I have Nicola as he's on drums, and bass players has been a rotating door as well. Right now I have Tim. So Tim's my bass player right now, and it's just been like that. And a lot of I have pretty consistent guys compared to some people. There are some artists that just every show is different people. And some of these session players, that's their deal. You know what I mean? They're on the road with Kelly Clarkson, and then next week they're on the road with Jason Aldean, and then one of them might be on tour with Pink. So it's they're session guys. They come in and they nail it. My guys are more friends, and we weren't tight when we started, so we had to work to get there. Where some of those Nashville guys are insane. Like I'd played a few bars on Broadway, which is the main strip where everybody's playing down there. And I had never met people before they walked on stage, and they're like, all right. And they made less mistakes than me. So, and like, I knew the songs I was going to play. So I was just sending them a list of, okay, here's what it is, in the key of A sharp or whatever it was in. And they just go and they nail it. Like they're that good.
Wow.
There's a thing down there called the Nashville numbering system.
I was about to ask you about that. That was going to be my next question.
And so it just allows people to know exactly where to play. Where it's like, if I say play a G in the key of A sharp, you could play that G on the guitar neck in like 12 different places. You know what I mean? You don't know if I mean low G, you don't know if I mean G5 or, if it's G7, you don't know, right? So Nashville numbering system allows you to kind of know exactly where it is. So yeah, if you're interested in that, go check it out. It's a pretty cool system, but it's a little hard to learn.
Word.
And then, so like at that point, my team was kind of built, and I ran with that for a while. And then with management, I've had meetings with some labels, and I've got advice from Pat Murphy, which was Aspire's old manager, and just with that, it's just kind of learning how to formulate what you are going to be and how to build your brand properly. Another one I was working with was Jordan Elliott. She had helped build the early stages of what I was doing, and she did a lot of work for me. And it's just, you have to have people around you that aren't trying to screw you. You have to have good people, and I mean, you're gonna get screwed. You always do.
Yeah. But in this industry.
Yeah, but there's no way of avoiding that. You just gotta take it with a grain of salt, and keep moving forward. That's it. The work ethic will trump all. That's my firm belief. You won't convince me otherwise. I believe that talent will only take you so far. Work ethic will always take you. So. Well,
man, I think that's a great place to end it.
Sounds good.
This has been a blast. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. Yeah, it's been awesome to hear about you and all those things. And I think ending it right there on work ethic is
exactly. If
cool.
There's one message you take from it. Outwork the guy beside you.
All men are created equal. Some work harder in preseason. All right. Thanks, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see y'all soon with something new.